world of Loki, the Norse trickster god whose many masks reveal a truth stranger than most myths. You probably think of Loki as just the sneaky prankster from your favorite movies, but the old sagas tell a more tangled tale. Loki is a shapeshifter, a master of disguise who can slip between forms like a shadow slipping through a crack in a door. One moment, he's a handsome god. The next, a salmon darting through the rapids. And then, quite unexpectedly, a mare who attracts a stallion. Yes, really. These early tales set the stage for the strange brood he would later father, each child as peculiar and potent as the tricks their dad loves to play. This shape-shifting trait is no mere gimmick. It reflects Loki's very nature as a boundary crosser, a figure who lives on the edges of God's order and chaos. Historians still argue whether Loki started as a god or a Jotun, one of the giant race often at odds with the gods, but his role as a liminal figure is clear. He's neither fully friend nor foe, and this ambiguity follows his offspring as well. In fact, Loki's shapeshifting isn't just about physical forms, it's about identity. He embodies the fluid, sometimes uncomfortable, spaces between categories god and giant, male and female, friend and enemy. His earliest exploits often involved these transformations, setting off chains of events that made the other gods wary, but unable to fully cut him loose. You might imagine the other gods treating him like that weird cousin who shows up unannounced with a bag of fireworks and a mischievous grin, half annoyed and a bit afraid of what could go wrong. One of the quirkiest tales you'll come across is when Loki, transformed into a mare, was impregnated by a stallion named Svaelfari. From that union came Sleipnir, the eight-legged horse that Odin himself would ride. The story blurs boundaries not only between species, but also between gender roles, which even by ancient standards was pretty out there. It's a reminder that Loki's family would be anything but ordinary. Of course, Loki's early tales aren't just playful antics. There's a darker undercurrent to hint that these transformations and deceptions are more than tricks. They're disruptions to the cosmic order. You can almost hear the other gods whispering, "What will he do next?" Which makes you realize why Odin might want to keep a close eye on Loki's strange children. Each one is a living wild card, a potential threat wrapped in mystery. Here's a historical tidbit. The idea of gods who shift shapes isn't unique to Norse myth. Many ancient cultures, from the Greeks to the Egyptians, had deities who could change form to trick, teach, or punish mortals. But Loki's particular blend of mischief, ambivalence, and unpredictability marks him as uniquely complicated. You can almost picture the ancient Norse storytellers pausing, raising an eyebrow, and saying, "Yeah, this guy's going to cause some trouble." And trouble he did. But as you'll see, the trouble often came wrapped in gifts. Loki's children aren't just monstrous or terrifying. They carry within them strange powers and destinies that even Odin had to reckon with. So when you hear about these bizarre offspring, remember that they're as much a part of the cosmic balance as the gods themselves. Remember that wild story of the mare Loki? That's just the start. His children reflect his uncanny nature in spades, from ferocious beasts to rulers of shadowy realms. Each one a puzzle piece in a grander picture that Odin chose not to dismantle, but to contain and sometimes, strangely, embrace. You trudge deeper into this tangled saga, now focusing on Fenrir, the colossal wolf, who is Loki's first and arguably most infamous child. Imagine a creature so enormous that when he stretches his jaws, they could swallow the sun. Fenrir isn't your average puppy. He's the embodiment of raw, uncontrollable power and chaos, born from the trickster's unpredictable legacy. And yet, Odin's decision to chain Fenrir instead of destroying him outright reveals a curious mix of fear and reluctant respect. Fenrir's story begins with a prophecy. He is destined to play a pivotal role in Ragnarok, the apocalyptic battle that will end the current world order. Historians still argue whether Fenrir's monstrous traits symbolize a natural force, like a wild beast representing destruction, or if he was a metaphor for the uncontrollable dangers lurking beyond civilization's borders. What's clear is that the gods were terrified. As Fenrir grew rapidly, his strength became impossible to ignore, and the other gods decided something had to be done. You can almost picture Odin's council, a room tense with unease where the gods debated their options. To kill Fenrir outright might seem like the safest bet, but that might also break some ancient cosmic rules or spark more trouble than it would solve. Instead, they chose to bind him first with ordinary chains, which Fenrir snapped like twigs. Eventually, they commissioned a magical fetter called Gleipnir, crafted from impossible materials: the sound of a cat's footsteps, the beard of a woman, the roots of a mountain, and so on. This chain was as much a trick as Fenrir's birth, binding him with something no mortal or god could have forged. The irony of using a trickster's ingenuity to restrain his own. Sun wouldn't have been lost on Odin. Here's a quirky tidbit. During the binding, Fenrir agreed to be chained only if one of the gods placed their hand in his mouth as a sign of trust. Tyr, the god of war and justice, volunteered losing his hand in the process. That moment, with its mix of betrayal and sacrifice, perfectly captures the uneasy balance between order and chaos that Fenrir represents. What fascinates you next is why Odin didn't just kill Fenrir after all this trouble. The answer isn't simple. Odin seems to understand that Fenrir's power is both a threat and a necessity. There is a certain fatalism in Norse myths, a recognition that some forces can't be destroyed, but only delayed. Fenrir's eventual release at Ragnarok will bring destruction, yes, but also pave the way for renewal. It's like holding back a flood with a dam that's strong but destined to break. Scholars also debate the symbolism behind Fenrir's chain. Some argue it reflects the tension between civilization and the wild, how societies try to control what they fear but can never fully conquer. Others suggest that Fenrir is a scapegoat figure, embodying the consequences of the god's own meddling and broken promises. Either way, you get the sense that Odin's choice to keep Fenrir alive, even in chains, is a strategic gamble, one that holds the balance between doom and survival. You can almost hear the cold wind howl as Fenrir lies bound, waiting for the moment he will break free. His story feels primal, a reminder that some parts of chaos are too wild to destroy, but too dangerous to ignore. Odin's decision to keep Fenrir chained rather than erase sets a pattern you'll see again with Loki's other strange children. And yes, you're starting to see the pattern. This family's madness isn't about simple good and evil. It's about forces that defy easy answers, forces Odin wrestles with, because sometimes even gods have to play a long game. You drift now toward the vast oceans where another of Loki's children lurks beneath the waves. Jormungandr, the world serpent. So colossal, he wraps himself around the entire earth, biting his own tail like a cosmic Ouroboros. This child is the literal embodiment of a boundary, the line where land ends and the unknown begins. And his story is wrapped in tension that's as deep as the ocean trenches he inhabits. Unlike Fenrir, who's chained and visible, Jormungandr is both everywhere and nowhere, an ever-present threat that no one can ignore. The mainstream myth tells us Jormungand was thrown into the sea by Odin at birth, where he grew so huge that his coils encircle Midgard, the human world. Imagine feeling the pressure of a serpent that big lurking beneath you as you drift in a wooden boat. No wonder the old sailors were wary. Historians still argue whether Jormungandr represents natural cycles like the tides and storms, or a more abstract symbol of the cyclical nature of time and destruction. His presence is a reminder that the boundaries we rely on between safety and danger, order and chaos, are always fragile. Jormungandr's relationship with Thor is one of the most famous rivalries in Norse myth. They're destined to clash during Ragnarok in a battle so fierce that both will perish. You can almost imagine the tension simmering like static electricity before a storm. Thor, the god of thunder and protector, versus Jormungandr, the serpent of the deep and chaos. Each encounter before the final battle is charged with anticipation, reminding you of those epic showdowns in modern fantasy stories, but with a hint of something ancient and elemental beneath it all. Here's a quirky tidbit for you. There's a tale where Thor, fishing with a giant Hymir, hooks Jormungandr and tries to pull him up from the depths. The serpent nearly drags Thor's boat under, but the giant, terrified, cuts the fishing line, and Jormungandr escapes, still waiting in the depths for the final showdown. You can't help but picture Thor frustrated, fishing rod in hand, wondering if he'll ever land that catch. What's fascinating is why Odin allowed Jormungandr to grow so large instead of killing or banishing him outright. It ties back to Odin's strategy of containment rather than destruction. Jormungandr's existence keeps the forces of chaos at bay, but also serves as a looming reminder of the limits of control. Scholars debate whether Jormungandr symbolizes nature's uncontrollable power or the inevitability of fate itself. Both interpretations hint at why Odin might find the serpent useful as a symbol of balance. You can almost hear the low rumble of thunder as you imagine Thor gearing up for their fateful clash. The tension between destruction and protection courses through Jormungandr's story. Like Fenrir, he embodies the paradox of being both a danger and a necessary part of the cosmic order. Odin's choice to keep him circling Midgard reflects a deep understanding that some forces must be contained, not erased, because they serve a larger purpose in the grand design. And yes, this watery giant, like his siblings, is a reminder that Loki's children are not just monsters or villains there, essential threads in the fabric of the mythic universe. Their strangeness and power push the gods to confront the limits of their own control and face the chaos that lurks beneath the surface. You start to see that Odin's game isn't about eliminating threats, but weaving them into a complex, uneasy piece, even if it's a piece that feels like it could unravel at any moment. Remember the mare Loki? Now add an ocean serpent to the mix. Things are getting even weirder. The shadows grow thicker as you step into Hel's realm, the cold twilight domain ruled by Loki's daughter. Hel, half alive, half dead, half goddess of everything in between. She's not your typical villain, but an ambiguous figure whose existence challenges the very ideas of death and afterlife. Her face, described as half beautiful woman and half rotting corpse, is a haunting symbol of duality, the thin line between life and death that she governs. You don't just visit her realm, you feel the chill seep into your bones, a place where warmth and hope are scarce, but acceptance and inevitability reign. Odin's decision to leave Hel to rule over her shadowy kingdom rather than annihilate her is fascinating. Instead of banishing or killing her, he recognizes her role in maintaining balance in the Norse cosmology. Hel's realm is where those who don't die gloriously in battle end up an afterlife realm, neither Valhalla nor a fiery hell, but something in between. Historians still argue whether Hel's domain was inspired by actual Norse beliefs about the afterlife or evolved later as a literary device to explain death's mystery. Either way, her story embodies the idea that death isn't just an end, but a complex transition, sometimes cruel, sometimes just neutral. What makes Hel particularly intriguing is her origin and position within the family. Unlike Fenrir and Jormungandr, who pose external threats, Hel's power is more subtle, but no less significant. She rules over those forgotten or cast aside those neither honored nor damned. Just ... existing. In this way, she personifies a necessary but uncomfortable truth. Odin tolerates her not out of affection, but pragmatism. She fills a cosmic role that even the Allfather can't or won't assume. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some sagas suggest that Hel was initially a beautiful goddess, but her half-rotting visage came from Odin casting her into the underworld, marking her as other and setting her apart from the gods. It's as if Odin needed her to embody death's dual nature, and so he deliberately made her unsettling both to mortals and gods alike. It's a bit like giving someone the ultimate "you can't sit with us" treatment. but on a cosmic scale. Odin's choice to keep Hel in place rather than destroy her sparks ongoing scholarly debates. Some argue he feared the consequences of disrupting the natural cycle of death, while others think he saw her as a necessary evil, a way to control the dead and prevent chaos in the afterlife. Either way, her story shows that sometimes gods accept things they can't control by making uneasy alliances with those they might otherwise despise. Walking through Hel's shadowy halls, you realize that this isn't just a story about death, but about the spaces between certainty and fear, light and dark, life and whatever comes after. Hel's reign is a reminder that some of Loki's children embody not just chaos, but also the uncomfortable truths that gods and mortals alike must face. Odin's decision to keep her is less about kindness and more about the cold calculus of cosmic balance. So, as you feel the chill of Hel's realm brush past you, remember that not all of Loki's children are rampaging beasts or world-destroying. Some are quietly holding the line between worlds, keeping the darkest edges of existence from unraveling completely. You barely have time to shake off Hel's chill before you're swept into the wild story of Sleipnir. Loki's eight-legged horse, born from a very unexpected pregnancy and destined to gallop across the 9 worlds with a speed no ordinary steed could match. This child is different from the monstrous siblings you've met so far. Less of a threat and more a strange, almost comical gift to the gods, especially Odin. And just when you think Loki's antics couldn't get weirder, the birth of Sleipnir proves otherwise. It all starts with Loki's infamous shapeshifting again, this time into a mare. The gods needed a powerful stallion named Svaelfari to help build a fortress. But the giant builder's horse was so strong it threatened to finish the job too quickly. To stop the giant, Loki transformed into a mare and lured Svaelfari away, leading to a most unusual pregnancy. When Loki gave birth to Sleipnir, an 8-legged horse with unmatched speed, even Odin was impressed. Sleipnir became Odin's mount, carrying him through the worlds on quests and battles. Historians still argue whether Sleipnir's 8 legs symbolize supernatural speed or represent something deeper like the connection between the earthly and the divine. Either way, the horse embodies the idea that Loki's trickery can sometimes create something powerful and beneficial, not just chaos. It's as if Loki's family is a mixed bag of wild danger and unexpected gifts. Here's a quirky tidbit. Sleipnir's extra legs made him so fast that he could gallop through the air and over water. Ancient storytellers probably loved imagining Odin racing across the skies on this strange steed. Like a cosmic Uber driver delivering wisdom or war on demand. Also, 8-legged horses weren't just a Norse thing. Some scholars think this motif shows up in other Indo-European myths, hinting at shared ancient symbols. What's fascinating about Odin's relationship with Sleipnir is how much he favors the horse. It's a sign that despite Loki's chaotic nature, some of his children were embraced as vital parts of the god's toolkit. Sleipnir's existence challenges the simplistic idea that Loki's kids were all dangerous monsters. Some, like this equine wonder, were practical assets. This selective acceptance also speaks to Odin's broader strategy. He's not blindly opposed to Loki or his children, but rather pragmatic. If something proves useful, even if born from trickery, Odin will keep it close. It's a lesson in the messy realities of power. Sometimes you have to ride the weird 8-legged horse of chaos to get where you need to go. And remember the mare story? That bizarre pregnancy perfectly encapsulates how Loki's nature and his children blur lines between genders, species, and allegiances. Sleipnir gallops not just through the 9 worlds, but through the contradictions of myth itself, showing that in this strange family, surprises come with every step. You might find yourself smiling at the thought of Odin atop Sleipnir, racing toward fate, the ultimate symbol that even in chaos there can be grace, speed, and perhaps a little bit of style. You've been following Loki's most famous kids, but now it's time to step into the shadows and meet the lesser-known children and oddities. the hidden side of Loki's family tree that rarely gets the spotlight, but is just as weird, if not weirder. These forgotten figures don't have the epic roles of Fenrir or Jormungandr, but they add layers of strangeness that make you wonder what exactly Odin was thinking by keeping them around. Take Narfi and Vali, for example, two sons whose stories are grim, tangled, and often contradictory. Some sources say Narfi was transformed into a wolf and killed by Vali as part of the god's punishment on Loki after his tricks went too far. Other versions flip the roles or leave the story murky. Historians still argue whether these characters were originally distinct or conflated later, reflecting the messiness of oral tradition. What's clear is that these hidden children play into the darker side of Loki's legacy, pain, sacrifice, and transformation. Then there's Mili, a somewhat mysterious figure whose name means the lovely one. Not much is said about him, which fuels speculation. Was Mili a minor god, a spirit, or just a forgotten oddity? This ambiguity adds to the overall sense that Loki's family is a collection of surprises and contradictions some feared. Some loved, some lost to time. Quirky tidbit time. Some sagas mention a child named Helblindi, which literally means Hellblindi. Only Rubykiss has the luxurious texture that glides on. Maiden is, a liney. And leaves, rich tear, long-lasting. Some Sigyn loves of Seftis. I case her, my kif. May niz, may niz. May maid niz, may niz. May niz, may niz, may niz. May ni, may niz. I cade all my maid niz. May see so as, kaples. It's a mad acute of kinsiet. Can me on make it sunset. I had a pipi sid. Let it kasik kads lids. You sick kabled. I bit it it's like a lud at a gog. But he's sometimes described as a brother to Loki himself, but other times as a child. These shifting identities are common in Norse myths, making it tricky to pin down exactly who's who. Imagine a family reunion where everyone's relationship to each other changes depending on who's telling the story that day, awkward and confusing, but oddly charming. Why did Odin keep these more obscure children around? The answer is tangled in the same pragmatic web you've seen before. Odin's focus wasn't on wiping out every trace of Loki's influence, but managing the damage and, where possible, harnessing the odd powers these kids possessed. Maybe he saw some use in their chaos, or maybe he just figured some things are easier to contain than to destroy. The presence of these less famous offspring suggests that Loki's strange children aren't just a handful of monsters, but a sprawling, unpredictable clan. It's like the mythological equivalent of that one wild cousin who nobody talks about but somehow always shows up with an outrageous story. Odin's tolerance of this motley crew also highlights the theme of complexity in Norse myth. It's not just about heroes and villains. It's about messy relationships, shifting alliances, and the idea that sometimes the scariest things aren't the obvious threats, but the ones lurking quietly in the background. And you start to see a pattern emerging. Odin's choices reflect a world where chaos isn't just an enemy to fight, but a force to be balanced, sometimes embraced, and occasionally just survived. So as you consider these hidden children forgotten, strange, and sometimes tragic, you realize they complete the picture of Loki's legacy. Not just a story of monsters, but a family saga filled with shadows, surprises, and endless questions. The tangled web of Loki's children wouldn't be complete without touching on the bigger picture, how Odin's decisions about them reflect his broader struggle with fate, power, and control. You've seen him chain Fenrir, tolerate Hel, embrace Sleipnir, and keep Jormungandr circling Midgard. What ties all this together is Odin's deep, complicated dance with inevitability. Odin is obsessed with knowledge and foresight, always seeking to outwit fate, yet in Norse myth, Fate is like that stubborn friend who refuses to leave your couch no matter how many hints you drop. The gods know Ragnarok will come, and Loki's children are the harbingers. Fenrir will break free, Gormungandr will rise, Hel will release the dead, and chaos will reign. Yet Odin chooses to keep them alive, shackled or watched, as if delaying the inevitable is a strategy worth pursuing. Historians still argue whether Odin's decisions reveal him as a cunning strategist or a tragic figure trapped by his own hubris. Some say he's playing a long game, betting that knowledge and sacrifice can buy time or alter destiny. Others see his actions as futile, a refusal to accept the natural order. Either way, his choices about Loki's children show a god grappling with forces he can't fully control. A quirky tidbit here is Odin's willingness to sacrifice parts of himself to gain wisdom. You know about his one-eyed gaze, but less talked about is how he hung himself from Yggdrasil, the world tree pierced by his own spear, to gain knowledge of runes. This self-sacrifice mirrors his handling of Loki's children, a painful, costly attempt to master chaos without destroying it. It's like a cosmic version of, "I'll hurt myself so I can fix this later." Odin's selective keeping of Loki's children also symbolizes the delicate balance between order and chaos. He doesn't crush every threat because some chaos is necessary for renewal and transformation. Fenrir's eventual breaking free will end the old world, yes, but also open the door for a new one. Jormungandr's battle with Thor is destruction with a purpose. Hel's realm keeps death orderly. Sleipnir helps Odin traverse the worlds. This balance echoes a universal truth. Without chaos, there's no change. Without change, no growth. This also hints at why Odin's approach to Loki's offspring isn't simply about punishment. It's about acceptance, adaptation, and the uneasy peace between what is and what must come. You can almost imagine Odin pacing his halls, knowing that his grip is never quite tight enough, but still refusing to let go. And here's a callback for, you remember the Mare Loki and the fishing trip with Thor. These moments of chaotic trickery aren't just wild stories. They reveal the texture of a cosmos where unpredictability is woven into the very fabric of existence. Odin's keeping of Loki's children is a testament to that messy, inevitable truth. So you see, Odin's strange family management style is less about control and more about survival of the gods, the worlds, and perhaps the stories themselves. You're halfway through this strange family saga, now drawn into the surprising reasons Odin kept most of Loki's children close despite their terrifying potential. It turns out Odin's choices weren't only about cosmic balance, but also about power both political and personal. The Norse gods, for all their might, played an endless game of alliances, rivalries, and reputation. And Loki's children were pieces in that game. Consider Fenrir again. Odin's fear of Fenrir wasn't just about the prophecy of destruction, but about maintaining order among the gods and the worlds. Fenrir's power threatened to disrupt the divine hierarchy, but killing him outright could have sparked rebellion or broken sacred laws. Chaining him was a way to assert control without sparking chaos, a political move as much as a mythic necessity. Historians still argue whether these myths reflect actual Viking social politics, where alliances and hostages kept peace, or if they're purely symbolic tales about cosmic forces. Either way, the idea that the gods negotiated power through complex relationships adds a layer of realism to the stories. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some scholars suggest that Fenrir's binding story echoes real-world practices where dangerous enemies were kept alive but restrained as a warning and symbol of power. Imagine a Viking chieftain keeping a rival prisoner chained but alive, a living threat that discouraged uprisings. Odin's handling of Hel also fits this pattern, by letting her rule the dead who don't make it to Valhalla. Odin delegates a difficult role that keeps the afterlife structured and the spirits from wandering chaotically. It's like assigning a strict but necessary bureaucrat to manage the underworld's messy paperwork. This delegation reduces Odin's burden and keeps things orderly without direct interference. And Sleipnir, the horse, is a power symbol for Odin, literally carrying him across worlds and battles. Having such a unique steed is a statement of status, reminding gods and mortals alike that Odin commands the means to traverse and influence all realms. It's a reminder that power isn't just brute force, but also mobility and reach. Odin's choices reveal his shrewdness as a leader. He doesn't simply react to threats, but manages them politically, balancing fear and respect. Keeping Loki's children close is both a show of dominance and an acknowledgement that outright destruction isn't always the best strategy. This complex power dynamic also reflects how the Norse viewed family not just as blood ties, but as webs of obligation, rivalry, and uneasy peace. Loki's children were part of this web, dangerous yet indispensable. Odin's decisions mirror how real leaders handle volatile relationships, balancing force with diplomacy. So, as you imagine Odin's halls, filled with whispers and wary glances, you see a god not just battling monsters, but managing a kingdom of chaos, using cunning and control to keep the fragile order intact. This political game is as much about survival as it is about destiny, a reminder that in Norse myths, power is never simple, and family is never straightforward. Now, as you near the final act, you begin to see how the fate of Loki's children intertwines with the ultimate destiny of the gods. The apocalyptic event known as Ragnarok. This is where all the tension built up by their existence will erupt, shaking the cosmos to its core. The children aren't just monsters or curiosities. They are the living catalysts of the end. Odin's choice to keep them close is like holding a ticking bomb, hoping to delay the explosion as long as possible. Fenrir's escape during Ragnarok will lead him to swallow Odin himself, fulfilling the dark prophecy. Jormungandr and Thor will engage in a fatal duel, sending shockwaves through the world's foundations. Hel will unleash the dead to join the battle, turning the tide into chaos. And Sleipnir, despite his speed and power, cannot outrun fate. Historians still argue whether Ragnarok symbolizes an actual end or a cyclical renewal, reflecting the Norse worldview of death and rebirth. Either way, Loki's children are at the heart of this cosmic drama. What's remarkable is that Odin's strategy wasn't to prevent this fate entirely, but to prepare for it, to manage the damage until the end came. It's a godly form of damage control with a cosmic scale, holding the monsters close, keeping them bound or useful, knowing that their release signals the beginning of the end. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some myths suggest that after Ragnarok, a new world will rise from the ashes, cleaner and brighter. Some of Loki's children might even survive or be reborn, showing that destruction and creation are two sides of the same coin. It's a bit like a cosmic reset button, with a few familiar faces coming back for the sequel. Odin's relationship with his strange children during Ragnarok is a tragic, almost Shakespearean tale of a father forced to confront the consequences of his choices. Keeping them close was both a way to control chaos and an act of denial, hoping that fate might be delayed or altered. Yet, like all great tragedies, the prophecy unfolds regardless, reminding you that some forces, no matter how tightly bound, will break free when the time comes. You can almost hear the distant clash of swords and the roar of beasts as the final battle begins. Reminder that the children of chaos are not merely threats, but essential players in the cosmic cycle. Odin's management of them reflects a profound tension between order and inevitability, control and surrender. So, as you let the story settle in, remember that the gods' greatest power is their ability to face the end, even when it comes from their own kin. Odin's strange children are a testament to the complicated, often painful dance between family, fate, and survival in the Norse cosmos. You've journeyed through the wild, twisting paths of Loki's strange children. And now it's time to see how Odin's choices shape their legacy. Not just in myths, but in the hearts and minds of those who tell their stories. These children aren't just monsters or chaos incarnate. They're symbols of complex ideas about family, power, fate, and survival that still resonate today. Odin's decision to keep most of them, whether chained, ruling, or galloping across worlds, speaks to a deeper understanding that chaos can't simply be erased. Instead, it must be acknowledged, managed, and sometimes embraced. This idea has echoed through centuries, influencing how we think about disorder, danger, and the unexpected gifts that come with them. Historians still argue whether these myths were meant as cautionary tales, reflections of Viking social realities, or poetic explorations of universal truths. Whatever the origin, Loki's children remain vivid reminders that families are messy, powerful, and sometimes downright strange. Here's a quirky tidbit to close on. Loki's offspring have inspired everything from modern comics to video games, often cast as villains or anti-heroes. Yet, in their original myths, they're far more nuanced each, with a story that challenges simple labels of good and evil. It's as if the old Norse storytellers were quietly telling us that every family has its wild cards. And that's what keeps the story interesting. As you settle in for the night, remember that these tales of gods and monsters are more than ancient fables. They're reflections of life's unpredictability, the balance of power and love, and the strange, sometimes uncomfortable truths we all carry. Odin's strange children teach us that sometimes survival means holding tight to the chaos within and around us, not in spite of it. And so, as the myths fade softly into your dreams, you carry with you the wild spirit of Loki's legacy of family that's strange, fierce, and impossible to forget. You can feel the night's calm wrapping around you like a warm cloak. The story is settling gently, like dust on ancient scrolls. The wild laughter of Loki's children echoes faintly in the distance, less a threat now and more a whisper of life's untamable edge. Breathe deeply. Let your mind drift along the shadowy rivers of myth. And know that even in chaos, there is a strange kind of peace. Sleep well, wrapped in the mystery and magic of old gods and their strange, unforgettable children.